Hi, Jessica. I'm David from BAFTA-nominated Britain's East and Southeast Asian Network. It's really, really nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And before anything else, I really want to congratulate you on the making of Bus Girl.
Oh,
And yeah, it really, I think, as a fellow creative myself, the making of it is already such an achievement. But with this short now being recognized in so many, different places, and most significantly now BAFTA, which is happening this Sunday, congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, it was a real surprise. We didn't know it
Mm,
was coming, so I didn't watch it the announcement live, and then when they did make the announcement for the long list, they didn't list our names. They just said Bus Girl. And so my producer called me
mm.
and she was like, "Do you think that's us?" So So then we were on the internet trying to find out if there are other short films called Bus Girl so that we could like check. We didn't want to get our hopes up, but yeah, it turned out to be us.
Of course, yeah. And yeah, it must be such a surreal experience. And I like for you yourself, what does this BAFTA mean to you and how is it significant?
Wow. I mean, I think for a really long time I've carried this weight of, the UK had never accepted me, like the entertainment industry
Mm,
here never accepted me. I didn't look British enough or didn't sound British enough, or
mm,
I don't act very British. And so I think I didn't realize how much of a complex I had about that, about my lack of acceptance at home.
mm,
And to be recognized on this level uh, has kind of lifted that. Um, and I had a BAFTA event last night, and so I met some local filmmakers, and I just was continuously surprised because I was like, oh my god, they know who I am and they have seen my work, and
mm.
um, yeah, it was just it's been so much affirmation in such a short space of time that I've felt quite overwhelmed by it, really.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's something that you have said you haven't expected, and then now to be recognized and validated by people you respect and by the industry in a way, it must be a lot to process.
It is, and I'm sure that
Mm,
I will be processing this for the next few months, I think, regardless of what
mm.
happens on Sunday night.
Exactly. And what I really appreciate with this acknowledgement, this recognition as well, is that it really shows how the quality of a film really does not depend on the amount of resource that you have, because I know with this short, everything is filmed using the Xiaomi phone, and
Mm.
I think that's incredibly impressive. That quality wise, it absolutely stands against all of the other films that were nominated, and not only that, I think with this recognition, what I personally appreciate is that it really shows Asians in a creative light, which is something that's not really often shown. And so I really, really appreciate this, and I'm absolutely rooting for the film, as you go ahead for this weekend. But talking more about the way that you've been filming this short with the Xiaomi phone, I recognize a lot of Wong Kar-wai references in the aesthetics of it, and I wonder if you have any other sources of inspiration heading into creating this film.
Uh, yeah, I think any Asian director goes through a Wong Kar-wai phase. It's like a rite of passage,
Yeah.
because he is one of the most iconic, prolific directors of all time.
Mm,
And I mean, my favorite film is Chungking Express. So I,
mm,
I, I love his work. Yeah, I have his book, which is The Art of Wong Kar-wai. Um,
mm.
another filmmaker. Well, what some people haven't caught is that the opening scene is an homage to the opening scene in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. Um,
Mm.
with well, it's just an homage in the fact that the meal that she makes is quite similar to the meal that the father makes in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, but this is obviously the daughter making it for her mother. And for me, that scene is really about how much Asian culture relies on food as a form of communication. I don't know if you've experienced this, but certainly when I was a kid, and my mother is Singaporean, and if my mother and I argued, we weren't very good at saying I'm sorry. But what we would do is, my mum would go slice up a plate of fruit and she'd like come bring me the fruit. And that was how we apologized. And if we had something to celebrate, it was like, okay, let's make a Peking duck. And if we were sad, our food was sad. And so it's so much of our language revolved around what we were eating and cooking for each other. And I wanted to make a reference to that in the opening of the film.
Yeah, and I definitely resonate. I'm actually from Malaysia, and I think the way I communicate with not just my parents, but my siblings, always through acts of service in one way, and we are not, um, we don't usually use words much. And I think that's why, when it comes to having watched the short, and amongst the lines that I really resonate with, aside from I'm an oyster, which I found really funny, but then I think the line that really got me was when you said work was good at the end of the short. And I mean, I almost just bawled because, you see your character June going through, such well, an experience similar to what you're going through in real life now, the sense of like validation, of something that you care so much about, and not really knowing where to share or
Mm-hmm.
convey that, and that all being contained in just these three words through a phone
Yeah.
call to your mom. And I mean, it really got me, just thinking back of, when I'm working away from Malaysia and how I communicate with my family like that. So is this moment something that came from, a personal experience, that is there a specific intention in why you wanted to convey this?
Mm. Well, it's a few things.
Mm,
So on one hand, what I wanted to do with that line is I like films, short films, which are about the fleetingness and beauty of
mm,
in fleetingness. And this is something that happens to her one night that will change her life, but not in the ways that you expect. She goes back to work tomorrow and she's still cleaning the rubbish out the
absolutely.
bins, and she's still cleaning tables. She's still not a chef. She still has a fraught relationship with her mother. Her mother still wants her to go back to school. So in so many ways, her life has not changed. But the way that it has changed is that she has this kernel of hope, this seed that this
Mm,
critic has planted in her head, and that memory of this one night is going to nourish her dream for the next few years as she goes through the late nights and the terrible pay and the awful bosses. Like that, this is what will keep her hope alive. um and so that's really what that is. It's like
mm,
it was a really big thing on the outside, but really it was just a big thing on the inside. There's not much to say.
mm,
And it was just for her. That moment was just for her. It wasn't about getting affirmation from her mother or getting affirmation from anyone else, because now she has a belief in herself that's
mm,
reinforced. uh, and that was really something I wanted going into the film. I said, I want to capture. We've seen a lot of London as a grey, rainy, miserable, gritty place. We've seen the crime. We've seen, like, on screen, I mean, we've seen the
mm,
darkness. Uh, but I feel like we very rarely get to see London through the lens of an 18-year-old. And I remember when I moved to London when I was 16. And same, I dropped out of school. So it's quite a lot of parallels. But I dropped out of school, I moved to London, and I remember thinking this city was so beautiful and the possibilities were so endless. And it really was like, this London is what you make of it. if you put your heart and soul into London, London will give back. And I felt like that hadn't been seen on screen before, so I wanted to capture that feeling in that last scene of like, oh, this night of hope is meant the world to her. But thank you for saying that. I'm glad it worked.
Absolutely. And I think if anything, this short feels like another little quite tangible kernel of hope that, aspiring creators or anyone who has a similar, orbit could watch to fuel themselves. And speaking of affirmation, I really, being someone working in the wellness industry, I really quite enjoyed watching, June on the bus, listening to words of affirmation before she, well, to kind of get into the headspace of, okay, I'm gonna go to work. And I don't know if it's intentional, but then it's also nice that, on the way back from work, it's just quiet. It feels like, there's a level of contentment there and there's no extra motivation is needed. And of course, in the setting, as you said, affirmation couldn't quite come from her mom in this case. And I wonder when, in your own life, like where were the sources that kept your motivation level high?
Well, I will say that my mum, is nothing like June's mum. So my mum has really been a massive source of inspiration for me my entire life, and believed in me when even when I didn't believe in me. So incredibly supportive of me leaving school, entering an industry which, culturally is not really supported. But my mum was always like, no, this is what you're meant to do. You go for it. You're meant to be in the creative arts. This is your thing, which is incredible. So yeah, I would say that she's been the biggest influence in terms of affirmation. Yeah.
Yeah, just to have someone believing in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, I think is so key. And even if it's not a parent or a family member, but a friend or a teacher, I think that sometimes really changes the way you tread on, a path that might feel quite lonely.
Yeah,
And
and I think because everyone, I mean, my dad, for starters, was not supportive. My teachers weren't supportive. My acting teacher wasn't supportive. Um, I think I actually got, like a D in acting when I was at school. So it
mm,
wasn't like written in the cards. None of I tried all different things like piano, and I tried dance and singing and all that.
mm,
And all of my teachers were like, nah, she's not gonna make it. Um, the kids I went to school with, yeah, very brutal about that stuff. And there
mm,
was so much negativity everywhere. And if I didn't have, I think you do just need one person in your corner. And if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have continued. I will, however, say though that I also feel incredibly shaped by the no's, by the people who didn't support me.
mm.
It helped me to develop a very, very tough skin, which is so necessary in this industry. You really have to have a tough skin. So
Mm.
I thank them just as much as I thank the people who said yes.
Absolutely, but when it comes to support, I can't help but notice in the credits of the short that there's quite a few Henwicks in there. So it feels like a bit of a family affair as well. And how was that like to be able to work on this project with so many of your family?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Both in this one, both my brothers helped. My younger brother Josh uh, is a chef in the kitchen, or at least he's a dishwasher. And my older brother did behind the scenes photography, and also he works at a production house, so he is very technically savvy, which I feel is my sort of downfall. So he was really able to uh, help guide me, not as much in Bus Girl, but in the sequel he was really create a technical consultant for the phone.
Mm,
um but and then my mum was an extra. And I think she helped out a little bit in costumes at one point when we were struggling. So yeah, it's lovely because it's lovely. It's it's lovely to have them be a part of my career, and it's really hard to do when you're just when I'm acting in other people's projects. It's like quite hard to bring your family to set and be like, see, this is what I do. Especially now with COVID, the protocols are so harsh. But when I was directing, I was like, I'm gonna let them all come. They can come as many days as they
Yeah.
want. And they had fun, and they even said at some point, like, whoa, you're the boss. This is your domain. And it was like a sort of switch had flipped when I think I just knew, because we only shot for 3 days, and I knew the scope of this was quite large, and I had to be on it. We could not go a day behind because I didn't have time to do any pickups. And so it was so laser focused. And I think for that week that I was in London, I slept like 3 hours a night, and it didn't matter because I had so much adrenaline and drive, and like I couldn't eat.
Mm.
I just lived and breathed the film, and that was what fed me. But it was nice for them to see me in my element, so to speak, I think.
Yeah, like so fully in it. And it's not, as you've said, you're not only directing this, you wrote this, and then you're also acting in it. And with that, having the presence of your family witnessing you doing all that must be a lot to kind of handle in one moment.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I wasn't supposed to act in it. That was an accident. It was meant to
Okay.
be that I wrote it, and then I was meant to direct it, and I cast actually another Asian actress. Like I cast another Asian actress in the lead. And then just before filming, her agents came to us and they said, look, she's on hold for Netflix. And the
Mm,
filming dates didn't clash at all, but Netflix were just so afraid that she might get COVID on the weekend that she shot
mm,
with us, that they were just like, we're just gonna not release her.
yeah.
And so she dropped out, and then basically I got to the stage where I thought, I'm gonna lose the funding. Um,
Mm,
if I couldn't find anyone. And so
mm.
I just thought, okay, I have to step in myself and do it. And it was really the last thing I wanted, because I didn't want people to think it was like a vanity project. I wanted people to take me seriously as a director.
Mm,
But it worked out, and I'm actually really glad with the way it happened.
mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you managed it so well, and I just really enjoyed the character June, and this, just the way you've portrayed her has really, hit deep with me, and just yeah, just recognizing these experiences within my own life as
Mhm.
well. And I know when we talk about scheduling conflict that you're also in the midst of filming Glass Onion at the
Yeah.
same time, and that you had to quite fiercely protect the space of, well, I still want to make sure I do Busco.
Mhm.
And why is it significant, especially at that point for you when you already have such a huge project?
Yeah. Well, I had come up with Busker before, months before Glass Onion, and
Mm,
I'd already secured the cast and got the dates back then. I had figured it out, and so when Glass Onion came, and I'm so glad I did that film, and it was a beautiful process, and I love Ryan, the director.
mm,
But when Glass Onion came, I said, "You guys have to let me go, otherwise I can't do this film. Like I've made a commitment." And yeah, people did think I was crazy because it's a, multi-million-dollar franchise, um, in comparison to my tiny little short that isn't even the catering budget of Glass Onion. And I just thought, I had been talking. The reason I protected it so fiercely was because I had been talking about directing for so many years, and then what
mm,
happens is, and I think this is most people's experience when they have sort of a dream, their normal life will continue to try to stop change, right? And so every time I was about to direct something, or I was thinking about directing something, acting would come along, and then it's like, oh well, I can't do it now because I'm on a 6 month shoot in New York or whatever, which I'm very grateful for, and this is
Mm,
champagne problems. But when it came up, I thought, I've made a commitment. I either have to do it now or it's never, and this is the test of me.
mm,
If I folded at the first sign of glass onion, then to me that's a reflection of, deep down, I just want to be an actor. But the
mm,
fact that I cared so much about it made me realize, I've taken some of the power away from acting, because for a long time I was very focused on acting,
mm,
and in the last few years something has changed, and I'm now more interested in telling stories. And I think it's growing up, and I think it's also, you know, I was the reason I started writing was I was incredibly jaded by what was on what was on show,
mm,
for women of color, for women of a certain age. Um, it just, it really depressed me. And so I, rather than complaining like, oh, there's not enough Asian stories, not enough Asian stories, I was like, I want to be a part of the change. I want to put my money where my mouth is.
mm,
Um, and that had really solidified these past few years. I think if Glass Onion had come to me sort of 3 years ago, I would have just cancelled the short film.
mm. Yeah, it's so useful what you said, and how for change to happen, you just really need to make space. And when you do, sometimes you realize that it's not necessarily an either or. And in your case, it was a both and. You got to do both and enjoy the best of, both the acting part and Busco is everything, including a family affair, which must be so special, above anything else. Just being able to spend time with your family and them witnessing you in your full element. I think, that's something I personally wouldn't have even traded for anything else. So yeah, I'm really, really happy to just witness all of this. And
Thank
I
you.
just have one like final wildcard question for you,
Okay.
which is also part of the credits. And I can't help but notice Gudetama, which is a really popular Japanese cartoon sitting in there within an egg whisk on your credits. And was that an influence of any sort, or is it just a little like I don't know, tease of
Um,
what's to come? Or
That's so funny that you've noticed that. No one has brought that up to me at all. And I think it's weird. I don't know why no one's mentioned it, that it's in the credits. But so Xiaomi, the company who created our phones, I guess they're friends with a bunch of these other companies, and so they came to set to do a
Oh.
set visit, and they bought these toys, and they put them around set, and they said, oh, this will be funny. And then myself and the crew became kind of obsessed with toys. uh so it really has no relevance to anything in the story. It's not a symbol of anything. I mean, I
Mm.
like that people think it might be, so maybe I should have left that. But honestly, it is just that we thought it was cute and we liked it, and so we just picked a couple and we said, why don't we just put it in the credits because it's funny, and so we did.
Yeah, I loved it. I think, this is it's always nice to have an element of like fun and play in, the process of what you're doing, even if it's, not central to the idea. I think it actually does fit with like the aesthetic, with the colors as well. It feels like, with the sense of humor that's in the short, it sort of fits quite nicely.
It does work. But
Yeah.
it's just funny that no one's mentioned it, because I would ask the same thing. I'd be like, why are those in the credits? But I think if you look closely in the film, you'll see, you might be able to catch them hidden in the back
Mm.
of set.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they make a reappearance in the sequel that we made, Sandwich Man. We brought them back.
Amazing. I definitely can't wait to watch it again and pick out, where Gudetama is in every
Uh,
scene. And I know we can watch it on YouTube now through the BAFTA
yes.
channel. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so
Amazing.
please, if you're watching this, I would love to hear what you think. Yeah, we're streaming on BAFTA for another week, uh, and then it will go dark. And I don't know when we're planning to put it
Okay.
up after that. So now's the time to watch if you
Yeah, Bus Girl, I highly, highly recommend. I've watched it myself about five, six times now, every time a little bit teary-eyed, and I always get new layers to it. So I really recommend it. And one final question for you, Jess. What next?
What next? I'm taking it slow. You know, I
Right.
don't have any acting things yet. I've been sent a couple things, so I'm reading scripts and I'm taking meetings, and I think I'm also kind of trying to figure out when I can next direct because I definitely want to direct this.
Mm,
Obviously not this year; it's too soon, but maybe the end of this year or more likely next year. So I'd love to start getting something into motion.
mm,
I've been bitten by the bug now, and I do want to go back to directing.
It feels like the start of a new momentum into this
Yeah.
journey, and wow, I'm really excited for you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
No, of course. And again, all the best ahead of this Sunday. We'll be rooting for you from BC. And I'm sure we'll be, looking at, what's happened through the screens. But meanwhile, probably more Busco watches amongst our team.
Thank you. I'll
Thank you
speak
so much
to you
again.
soon. Okay.
Yeah, speak to you soon, Jess.
Bye.